What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Wild Nutrition Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Heskett, and today's is episode 118 is another Coffee Talk Friday. We are back. As you know, if you listen to the past two episodes, I had to take a little bit of a hiatus as things changed. I have moved from working at LWA to going to 8 Wellness Collective, which we have some awesome things coming. We have a podcast coming over there in the works. No details for the release yet, but I have launched a new program over there called Prime, which is a great group coaching program for the person who needs like a little support, but you don't need the full 101 coaching, like all the accountability that comes with that. So we have launched a couple things that are pretty awesome. Super excited about all the opportunities over there. And you can find out more about Prime and other things down in the show notes. But that's not what today's episode's about. So that's, again, if this is your first episode since we've come back, that's why. There's been a lot of things, and with family and everything else going on, I just had limited resources, so podcast had to go temporarily. So we're back, and today we're going to talk about how nothing changes until you do. So when it comes to reaching any of our goals, we like to live in the little safe, like the safety zone, what's that called? Comfort zone. We want to be there. And even if we're not happy with how things are, if you want to lose weight, you don't like how your clothes fit, you think you're too skinny and you want to get bigger, or you want your butt to look better in pants, whatever your goal is, the pain of staying the same needs to outweigh the pain of change. Because anytime we do anything that changes, it's mental and possibly physical energy. It's going to take up some of your capacity. You're going to have to use energy on it. And we tend not to like to do it, which is why a lot of people will search for them little magic bullet or whatever it is when it comes to doing diet changes, or why Ozempic and Wegovy and all the other semaglutide type medications are super popular, because people look at it like, oh, this is easy. This takes less resources. It's going to take up less of my capacity. I can just do this, get a result. But then nobody talks about how you have to do those things with actual lifestyle change to keep the results on the back end, which is wild. And this kind of goes with today's theme of when we're looking at those. And there's reasons to take them. Like, certain people will benefit from taking semaglutide. I am not a semaglutide hater. I am a hater of people who use it, say it's like a miracle cure. I've seen some companies, some MLM companies who, as you know, I despise. I think they're predatory. I think they do more harm than good. They ruin people's relationship with food. They get people trapped into a very expensive meal plan, and then people don't know how to actually lose weight without taking their stuff. And so they're on the cycle of jumping on and off a program, which should never be the goal long term. So I've seen a few people who work for these, quote unquote, work for, get commissions from these companies saying that they're trying to get doctors on the team to be able to prescribe people in MLM programs semaglutide. Again, the problem with it, if you don't know this and you've been considering it, so when you initially take it, it's going to decrease your appetite. It like slows down stomach motility, like it decreases your appetite. That's one of the main things. Or basically, you're not hungry, so you're not going to eat, which is great for people who suffer from like really bad food noise. And it can work in the short term to give you some clarity there. But over time, you have to take a higher and higher dose, which means you have to spend more and more money. So if it's, say, $50 a milligram, I don't know the price. But we're just going to say $50 a milligram. Well, you start off with a milligram. It's like, okay, that's $50 a week. And then it's like, well, now you need to bump up to 2 milligrams. Okay, that's $100 a week. Well, now you have to bump up because it's getting less and less effective. Kind of like caffeine. Like if you don't drink any caffeine, you have a cup of coffee, you're like, oh my God, I have so much energy. Then you're drinking that cup of coffee. Next thing you know, it's not as effective. So to get the same effect, now you need 2 cups of coffee. And then you need 3 cups of coffee. And so it's kind of the same thing as caffeine in a lot of ways. It's not the same thing. Before someone comments, it's not the same thing. But to paint a picture, it's kind of the same thing. So you have to take a higher and higher dose until you come off of it. And then I believe you wean off or people just come off. But then if you haven't done any lifestyle changes, you haven't started working out, you haven't actually started watching your diet and moving to an 80-20 or 90-10 minimally processed food diet with, 10 to 20% fun foods. If you haven't done that work, you're going to immediately go back to all the things you were doing because you're going to be starving. So now if you have not done that, you're in like the 50-50, which is where a lot of people live, is like 50% of their calories coming from unprocessed food, 50% coming from really processed food or more, if we're just talking calories. Then all of a sudden your appetite comes roaring back. You haven't done any work to see what a portion size is. You've lost muscle mass because you're eating like nothing. And if you haven't worked out, then definitely lost muscle mass. So your energy levels are going to be lower, and that's where people get into trouble. But it was easy on the front end, but the back end, you have to do all this work, and it's too late. Like if you haven't tried to like work on your relationship with food while you're like on the back end of a diet when you're starving, because there are a couple things happen. One, you're hungry all the time. It's no surprise. But actually, there's a few other things. One, you get the food noise where you're thinking about food all the time. Food tastes better. So literally, your taste buds become more sensitive and food will taste better. If you've ever done like a really long hike and you've burnt, thousands of calories on, say, like a 12-mile hike, and then you like finally sit down, you're like, oh, I get like a burger and fries, and you're like, oh my God, it tastes so good. But then if you had that same thing, go back to the same place, you're like, oh man, it was so good last time. Go back, you're like, it's average. One of the reasons is during that hike, your body's like, we need calories, we need calories. You sit down and it's like, oh my God, this tastes amazing. That's one of the reasons. So when you're dieting, same thing happens. Like all of a sudden food tastes much, much better. I remember when I was competing bodybuilding, like the little bit of fat you would have like on a chicken breast, like I think most people cut it off, but like we would sear the shit out of that. And it was like the best little bite we would have. It was so good. Because all the food was bland, obviously, like the chicken, broccoli, rice, stereotypical bullshit. That's what we were doing. White fish, ground beef, like with sweet potatoes were like the highlight of the day. So all of a sudden food tastes a lot better. You have no appetite regulation. You haven't worked on food, so you're not quite sure what to do. And so all of a sudden you're just overeating, and then the weight comes piling back on. So regardless of the situation, whether you're going to take semaglutide or not, you need to start working on your relationship with food. And this can happen whether you want to lose weight or you just wanted to try to improve your health or build muscle, whatever it is. We need to work towards a way where we're eating 80 to 90% minimally processed food. I don't want to say unprocessed because now we're starting to see people being like, well, technically cooking is processing your food. We know what unprocessed means, but in layman's terms, but to appease the masses of trolls that exist online, minimally processed foods for you who are very, very literate, which is like chicken breast, like not frozen chicken bites. That's fine. We have them in the freezer right now. Breaded chicken bites. They're great on occasion, but you shouldn't have them every single day. Or if you have them every single day, the rest of the diet looks really amazing. So we want to move in that direction and eating that way most of the time. Breakfast, you have some protein and some fiber, which can be veggies or fruit or maybe some whole grains like oatmeal. You do that with breakfast. We do that with lunch where, again, there's some sort of, I don't like saying like a carb and fat source anymore. I like saying some sort of source of fiber. And yes, there's fiber supplements where someone could go around. But if we're getting like a meal with veggies, fiber, and protein, that means whatever carb, whatever veggie, fruit, etc., you're eating those things and they contain fiber. It's not, it was just white rice and chicken. Like, that's not going to be filling or very nutritious. We're going to have some sort of source of fiber there, which means something that's minimally processed. We're going to get some sort of veggie, some sort of fruit, some sort of whole grain, something that contains some fiber, or nuts and seeds. They also contain fiber. We're going to get something like that. And then dinner's the same thing. And when it comes to snacking, so we just had this question in our Prime group call. So we do a weekly call with the Prime group. And one of the main struggles is snacking. Everyone wants to snack, which I get. But this was something was eye-opening. I believe the USDA did a study. And they found that snacking has increased significantly. And it really increased when it was pushed the 6 meals a day, like 5 to 6 small meals a day. That's where snacking really took off. But the USDA did a study where they found that between 0 snacks and I forget the top end, 6 snacks per day, they found people have 2 to 3 more snacks than they did a few decades ago. I forget the actual details. I don't have them in front of me. But when you look at other countries in more, I would say, traditional rural setting, not urban. So the book French Kids Eat Everything, in a rural setting, snacking is frowned upon. Like, you have breakfast, you have lunch, you have dinner, and after dinner you might have a small dessert. But in between meals, you're not actually snacking. So the problem with snacking, if you are a snacker, is that's where a lot of calories come from. Because when I say the word snack, what do you think of? You're probably not thinking of, turkey wrap. No, you're probably thinking chips, popcorn, chocolate, ice cream, something like that, where it's that's a snack. Cheese and crackers, hummus, and hummus dip. So some shit like that. Maybe it's a healthier side, like hummus and veggies. Which still there's a lot of fat in hummus if you didn't know. So when you add food in, we started to see wicked. And who else quotes this is, funny enough, the book Obesity Code by Dr. Jason Fung. I know the last name's Fung, Dr. Fung, who his whole spiel is insulin, but he was saying, oh, see, we're spiking insulin multiple times a day. It's like, no, what happened is we didn't actually reduce our meal sizes, or we reduced them by, say, 50 calories. Lunch went from, say, 400 calories. I'm making numbers up, but 400 calories to 450. But then we added a 300 calorie snack. So we reduced meals by 50 calories, but added 300. And again, I made those numbers up, but we didn't reduce what's not made up. We didn't reduce our meals to add in the snacks to be isocaloric, which means staying the same as when we weren't snacking back a few decades ago. So snacking has increased, especially when it comes to sugary, calorie-laden beverages. That has all increased. And it's not that the sugar is bad, right? We have just added more calories to where the average person's eating somewhere between 25 and 3,000 calories per day in the US. Now, that's men and women combined. But most people are sedentary and they need less than that to maintain their weight. So everyone's eating in a calorie surplus. So it's not insulin, it's not oxalates, it's not, what's the other things that people have been saying online? There's a ton of shit. But it's not, we're just eating too much food all the time, especially processed food. We're having too many snacks and we're not actually tracking. So if we want snacks, we need to make sure that's fitting within our calorie goals. So anyways, going back to what I talked to this client is, I don't like the word snack when it comes to weight loss. How I want you to think of every time I eat, I'm going to have a meal. Why? I say the word snack. What do you think of? What did I say earlier? Probably automatically thinking chips, popcorn, chocolate, ice cream, sweets, savory, salty, pretzels, some shit like that. If I say you're going to have a small meal, what do you think of? Maybe it's like a lunch, like a wrap or a sandwich with maybe a side salad. Maybe it is like chicken, broccoli, and rice. It is a meal, and there is a protein, a carb, a fat, and usually some sort of source of fiber all in one spot. So instead of saying we're going to snack, we are going to have mini meals. That is your snack. That's the way to change if you are a snacker. And I like a snack. I like a snack at night, but the way I do it, make sure that when I say mini meal, this doesn't mean you have to have like a turkey wrap. You can have something sweet, but where's the protein? Are we getting any fiber here? Where's the fats coming from? So this is actually filling, and I'm not going to eat it and then be hungry 2 seconds later. If you struggle with snacking, some people don't struggle with snacking. If that's you and you can control your calories, some people can go and have like an ice cream bar. They hit their protein goal. They hit their fiber goal. They're like, I just have like 150 calories left over. Like, I'm having some ice cream. Like, yeah, that works too. You can do that. So we definitely deviated from what I originally had for the title of Nothing Changes Until You Do. But nothing really does. Like, unless you want to put in the work to make changes, no matter how big or small the changes are, nothing is going to change. You're not going to wake up and magically lose weight. You're not going to wake up and magically be healthier or magically build muscle. It takes work, it takes commitment, and it takes change. With whatever, even outside of health and fitness. Whatever you want to do, you have to change the things you're currently doing if you're currently not being successful in those endeavors. And if you're like, well, I think I am. There's certain red flag words that I've picked up over the years. And if I say them, I'll red flag myself too. Things like, I feel like, I think. And I'll catch myself saying them too. So I'm not perfect with this either, guys. But if you're saying those things, I feel like I'm making progress. I think I'm making progress. I deserve to make progress. Or any words like that were like, what is the progress? If you want to have progress and we want to see changes, we have to be able to measure it. There needs to be something measurable for most things. This is mental health would be the one thing where like talk to a therapist or psychologist about that. I don't know how you would measure that. I'm sure there's a test or something, or some way of like journaling but if your goal is weight loss, how are you measuring it? Is it progress pictures, which are, so we can, say qualitative or quantitative data, with quantitative being numbers, qualitative being more like comparing two pictures side by side. Like there's no hard data, it's just visual, but you can tell like, hey, yeah, I'm definitely looking leaner from this 4 week after photo compared to week 1. Okay, we have measured progress. So instead of being like, I feel like I'm making progress, like what is it? And people don't like that because it's uncomfortable. We don't like to be uncomfortable, and we think that what we are currently doing is enough to make changes when it's usually not. So I think this might be where we're going to start wrapping up here. With changes, you also have to realize sometimes you won't have the capacity to make all the changes you want all at once, which is okay. It's okay to sometimes not chase your goals right now when it's a bad time. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to get shit results. It's probably going to affect you in the future. It is okay to sometimes be like, here's my goal. I can't do it right now. So here's the plan for how I'm going to get to be able to reach that goal. So this month is terrible with the kids' sports schedules. I can't really start on everything. So I'm going to start my fat loss phase next month. Great. Now, this isn't a cop-out. If you're like, oh, sweet, keep listening, keep listening. So there's a list of things you can do to work on your health and work towards fat loss. Of some of those things, if you're like, I don't have time to meal prep, I don't have time to work out. Okay, great. You're still going to eat 3 times a day. Can we work on portion sizes? Can we work on making sure there's a protein and more veggies at each meal? Like, we can work on those things. Those things can change. Or can we just work on like drinking more water, cutting back on alcohol, drinking less calorie-laden beverages? Can we work on getting more steps in? Can we do these other things that you're going to need to do in the future that don't take up much time, that aren't really mentally taxing, that you could just start doing now? And a lot of people will be like, what? Because you have like an all or nothing mindset. Like, what do you mean? Like, I'm either going to do it all or I'm not going to do any of it. It's like, that sounds ridiculous. Can you drink more water today? Yeah. Are you going to feel better if you do it? Probably. Cool. Let's do that. Nothing else. Just do that. Just start drinking more water. And when you plan it that way, you're like, oh shit, I'm going to knock out some of this like tedious, annoying shit out first. And then I'm going to be able to kind of like really focus on just like the things I've struggled with in the past, like getting my workouts in. I'm just going to focus on that on like month 1 when I'm ready to get started, because the kids' sports schedule ends on the 30th of this month. So on the 1st, I'm going to be able to kick things off full force. Great. So let's work on the other things. Maybe it's journaling. There's a ton of things. And no, you don't need to do more research. Another red flag. I'm doing my research on what? On what? Like, the research you need to do to take the first steps should take you about an hour of reading. Or if you listen to this podcast, if this is your first episode, there's your research. It's done. Start drinking more water if you're not drinking half an ounce per pound body weight or per pound goal weight. Half an ounce. So if you weigh 200, 100 ounces of water. If you're like 300, I set a goal of a gallon. You don't need to go necessarily over that unless you want to. So you just start there. Is it getting more sleep, more quality of sleep? So improving the quality of your sleep. Can we work on those things? Is it cleaning up the workout area you have at home? Is it getting a gym membership? Like, instead of trying to do all these things all at once on the first, like, what can we knock out now to make the first as easy as possible? Because we should not try to make things harder. Nothing changes unless you do. Meaning, you're in the comfort zone, and we automatically don't like leaving our comfort zone. So let's instead of trying to jump outside of the comfort zone, let's just take a step. Take one little step outside and you're like, hey, it's not that bad. If you jump out, you're like a kid, all of a sudden realizes mom and dad are around, oh, I was having fun. Oh shit. I'm scared. I'm going to cry. Run back. That was scary. Then you're back in the comfort zone, which is where your bad habits are, the habits you want to change. Instead, let's take a step. Oh, this isn't bad. Maybe I'll take another step. And maybe you take too many, but then you're like, hey, I'm going to backtrack a little bit, but I'm still not where my comfort zone originally was. This isn't too bad. It's still work, but it's not too bad. And then you can take a few more steps. I always visualize, so the visual's like a bubble. So you have your comfort zone bubble. And then outside of that is a slightly bigger bubble of this is uncomfortable. And then outside of that's really, really scary. And everyone's going to be a little bit different. I've met people where their bubble for this is uncomfortable is massive. And I've met people where it's very tiny and they take like 2 steps and all of a sudden they're in like scary territory. So you have to figure out who you are, like, and don't compare yourself to others because it's your journey. You don't need to be perfect. And comparison is literally the thief of joy. If you're comparing your journey with health or whatever you're pursuing in life to someone else, it is not going to be fair because they're not you. Their opportunities, their upbringing, their genetics, everything is different. So you can't compare. Focus on yourself. Instead of comparing, learn what they did. You don't realize what happens behind closed doors. A lot of some of the best transformations I've seen in the gym where I haven't really worked with a person, behind closed doors, that shit was scary. Like there is issues, or they hit rock bottom. It was a divorce. It was a massive health scare, whether it's a family member passing or a close friend or themselves going to a doctor and all of a sudden be like, oh shit, I need to get my shit together, or ... So it's usually something like that. And then you're like, oh, I want that transformation. It's like, you haven't hit rock bottom yet. Like they're going all in. You can get there, but they did it in 3 months. It's going to take you 6 months to a year, which is fine. Or, in case of building muscle, the prevalence of steroids, which help with building muscle and burning fat, is everywhere. Literally every commercial gym, somebody's or multiple people are taking some sort of performance enhancing drugs. So you can't compare your progress to them because you can get 10 years of progress within a year, which means you're seeing massive changes within just like 12 weeks, which is the whole temptation that people get into. So don't compare yourself to other people's journey. Focus on yourself. See if there's anything you can learn from the other person. And if it's applicable to your journey and your life, instead of comparing, be like, oh, I suck. I'm only down 5 pounds this month. They're down 15. Like, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Maybe they weigh more than you, then it's faster to lose weight. Maybe there's other things going on, or it's just simply genetics. Focus on you, because in 3 years, your progress is probably going to be about the same, to be honest. You don't get super fast progress forever and ever. Or maybe it's the first time they've ever dieted, versus if you've been chronic yo-yo dieter, you respond more and more slowly to dieting, versus if it's their first time ever dieting, then they're going to respond very, very well to dieting. So there's that too. So again, you don't know what's happening behind closed doors. Anyways, I think I said I was going to wrap this up around the 18-minute mark, and now we're at 28 minutes. So thanks for tuning in, guys, to Coffee Talk Friday. We're going to be back on a at least one a week for the podcast for a little bit. I need to get guests back on here, and we are going to start, we're going to get back to, so going back to like tiptoeing outside, we're going to get back to the twice a week. I'm not promising twice a week right now, because things go from 0 to 60 very quickly right now in my life. So I don't want you to be like expecting, but moving forward, at least once a week, there's going to be a podcast coming out. So look for that. And as always, if you enjoyed the episode, please leave a 5-star review, as it helps push the show out there, helps people find the show, which again, I just want to help people. And then if you're not following me online, obviously go down. I post every day, or not every day, but at least 4 times a week on my socials right now. So go down, give me a follow on TikTok or Instagram, where I'm most active. There's also the Facebook group. And then if you're not following the Not Perfect Kitchen, I would highly recommend giving that follow on TikTok or Instagram, as that's going to be the new project coming out with my buddy Nick Averona, where we're going to be doing we're not exactly sure what we're doing. I'm being honest. Like we just came up with an idea of let's put recipes out there for people that are macro friendly. And that's literally about the extent that we have thought through it. And we just said, we're going to like figure it out as we go. So, the plan is to like use a lot of food that we hunt and grow. But also to be applicable to the average person, which is a strange, like, weird nuance we're going to have to like figure out. So when I say we're going to figure out as we go, it's literally like what responds well on social media, what doesn't, what grows our following, what does not, and then we're going to go from there. But it's going to be macro friendly, fairly easy recipes. Anyways, as always, appreciate you and hope you have a amazing fucking weekend.